All right, let's try to finish up this section. It's going to end with a very, very important thematic lesson that Atticus is going to teach Scout about this whole incident with Walter Cunningham. So we saw Calpurnia as acting for discipline and instruction for Scout in terms of like manners as well. So it's a moral education. How do you treat others and so on. Also, it's important to note Calpurnia is a black woman, right? Living in the home for most of the time. Like she goes back to her house in the evenings, but she's a maid, but she's also like a mom. Remember, Scout's mom died, and so she doesn't have any female role model. Calpurnia taught her to read. She was part of the education for Scout academically, and now she's giving her also moral education and moral principles that are the same as Atticus is teaching. So Calpurnia and Atticus are kind of like a mom and a dad almost as a team teaching Scout and Jem. Calpurnia sent me through the swinging door to the dining room with a stinging smack. I retrieved my plate, finished my dinner in the kitchen, thankful though that I was spared the humiliation of facing them again. And anyhow, they go back to school, and now something else is going to happen at school that reveals the same class struggle and the same some other lessons that Miss Caroline's going to have to learn about the Maycomb families. And in this case, you know, if up here, for example, is the rich, right, and down here is poor, well, I mean, Atticus is going to be at the top level, or near the top, maybe here, because he's a lawyer. Cunningham's, you know, they're going to be quite low. They're going to be almost at the bottom, but not quite as bad as another family that we're going to see. They're definitely lower class, but we're going to see there's some people here, and there's even some people way below down here. And we're going to have to ask, okay, where do the black people come in? Is there anyone lower than them? I returned to school and hated Calpurnia steadily until a sudden shriek shattered my resentments. I looked up to see Miss Caroline standing in the middle of the room, sheer horror flooding her face. Apparently she had revived enough to persevere in her profession. "It's alive!" she screamed. The male population of the class rushed as one to her assistance. Lord, I thought, she's scared of a mouse. Little Chuck Little, whose patience with all living things was phenomenal, said, "Which way did he go, Miss Caroline? Tell us where he went, quick! DC," he turned to a boy behind him. "DC, shut the door and we'll catch him. Quick, ma'am, where'd he go?" Miss Caroline pointed a shaking finger not at the floor, nor at a desk, but to a hulking individual unknown to me. Little Chuck's face contracted, and he said gently, "You mean him, ma'am?" "Yes'm, he's alive. Did he scare you some way?" Miss Caroline said desperately, "I was just walking by when it crawled out of his hair. Just crawled out of his hair." Little Chuck grinned broadly. "There ain't no need to fear a cootie, ma'am. Ain't you ever seen one? Now don't you be afraid. You just go back to your desk and teach us some more." Little Chuck Little was another member of the population who didn't know where his next meal was coming from, but he was a born gentleman. He put his hand under her elbow and led Miss Caroline to the front of the room. "Now don't you fret, ma'am," he said. "There ain't no need to fear a cootie. I'll just fetch you some cool water." The Cootie's host showed not the faintest interest in the furor he had wrought. He searched the scalp above his forehead, located his guest, and pinched it between his thumb and forefinger. Miss Caroline watched the process in horrid fascination. Little Chuck brought water in a paper cup, and she drank it gratefully. Finally, she found her voice. "What is your name, son?" The boy blinked. "Who? Me?" Miss Caroline nodded. "Burris Yule." Miss Caroline inspected her roll book. "I have a Yule here, but I don't have a first name. Would you spell your first name for me?" "Don't know how. They call me Burris home." "All right. What on earth happened here?" "Well, a mouse suddenly came out of this guy's..." This is going to try to be a mouse, guys. Just looks more like a bird. My drawing is getting worse on this thing. Anyway. Okay, that's my mouse. So hopefully that's entertaining you guys a little bit. All right. So a mouse is living in the guy's hair. It's really disgusting, right? And she freaks out. And they don't seem really bothered by it. The fact that, this guy has a mouse living right in his hair. He can't even spell his own name. "Well, Burris," said Miss Caroline, "I think we better excuse you for the rest of the afternoon. I want you to go home and wash your hair." From her desk, she produced a thick volume, leafed through its pages, and read for a moment. "A good home remedy for... Burris, I want you to go home and wash your hair with lye soap. When you've done that, treat your scalp with kerosene." "What for, missus?" "To get rid of the cooties. But you see, Burris, the other children might catch him, and you wouldn't want that, would you?" The boy stood up. He was the filthiest human I had ever seen. His neck was dark gray, the backs of his hands were rusty, and his fingernails were black, deep into the quick. He peered at Miss Caroline from a fist-sized clean space on his face. No one had noticed him, probably because Miss Caroline and I had entertained the class most of the morning. So notice how disgustingly filthy and poor Burris is. And he's from the Yule family. So we're going to see the Yule family is going to be very, very sad kind of family. Very dirty, poor, unsafe conditions. They're going to be a key family later on. "And Burris," said Miss Caroline, "please bathe yourself before you come back tomorrow." The boy laughed rudely. "You ain't sending me home, missus. I was on the verge of leaving. I done my time for this year." Miss Caroline looked puzzled. "What do you mean by that?" The boy did not answer. He gave a short, contemptuous snort. One of the elderly members of the class answered her. "He's one of the Yules, ma'am." And I wondered if this explanation would be as unsuccessful as my attempt, but Miss Caroline seemed willing to listen. "Whole school's full of 'em. They come the first day every year and then leave. The truant lady gets 'em here because she threatens 'em with the sheriff, but she just give up trying to hold 'em. She reckons she's carried out the law, just getting their names on the roll and running 'em here the first day. You're supposed to mark 'em absent the rest of the year." Okay? So they only go to school one day of the year. They are totally ignorant and uneducated people. Really poor and dirty and uneducated. "What about their parents?" asked Miss Caroline in genuine concern. "Ain't got no mother," was the answer, "and their pa's right contentious." Burris Yule was flattered by the recital. "Been coming to the first day of the first grade for 3 years now," he said expansively. "Reckon if I'm smart this year, they'll promote me to the second." Miss Caroline said, "Sit back down, please, Burris." And the moment she said it, I knew she had made a serious mistake. The boy's condescension flashed to anger. "You try and make me, missus." Little Chuck Little got to his feet. "You let him go, ma'am," he said. "He's a mean one. A hard-down mean one. He's liable to start something, and there's some little folks here." He was among the most diminutive of men, but when Burris Yule turned toward him, Little Chuck's right hand went to his pocket. "Watch your step, Burris," he said. "As soon as kill you as look at you. Now go home." Burris seemed to be afraid of a child half his height, and Miss Caroline took advantage of his indecision. "Burris, go home. And if you don't I'll call the principal, she said. I'll have to report this anyway. Anyway, we got to skip down. So this incident is very important. Another lesson for Miss Caroline. And Scout's going to go home and talk to Atticus about everything that happened on the first day at school. So let's go down and take a look at their discussion, because that's going to be a key teaching of Atticus, and I want to get this done by the end of this video, so I hope I can make it in 4.5 minutes. After supper, Atticus sat down with the paper and called, "Scout, ready to read? The Lord sent me more than I could bear, and I went to the front porch." Atticus followed me. "Something wrong, Scout?" I told Atticus I didn't feel well and didn't think I'd go to school anymore if it was all right with him. Atticus sat down and swing, crossed his legs, his fingers wandered to his watch pocket, and he said that was the only way he could think. He waited in amiable silence, and I sought to reinforce my position. "You never went to school, and you do all right, so I'll just stay home too. You can teach me like Granddaddy taught you and Uncle Jack." "No, I can't," said Atticus. "I have to make a living. Besides, they'd put me in jail if I kept you at home. A dose of magnesia for you tonight and school tomorrow." "I'm feeling all right, really." "Thought so. What's the matter?" Bit by bit, I told him the day's misfortunes. "And she said you taught me all wrong, so we can't ever read anymore, ever. Please don't send me back, please, sir." Atticus stood up and walked to the end of the porch. When he completed his examination of the wisteria vine, he strolled back to me. "First of all," he said, "if you can learn a simple trick, Scout, you'll get along a lot better with all kinds of folks. You never really understand a person until you consider things from his point of view. Sir, until you climb into his skin and walk around in it." This is one of the most important quotes in the whole book. You definitely want to highlight it, underline it, make a note of it, whatever you got to do in your text. This is a key teaching of Atticus. This is the whole main kind of teaching morally that he gives to his children. And so notice that he says, how can you get along better with people? You got to consider things from their point of view. Consider others' feelings plus their point of view. Okay? What's this called? Empathy. Empathy. Feeling what they feel. Considering, like, imagine you were exactly in their shoes. But notice he says, climb around into their skin and walk around in it. So that brings the issue of race also. It's the first clue. Atticus is not racist. And what does he explain? Atticus said, "I'd learned many things today. Miss Caroline had learned several things herself. She had learned not to hand something to a Cunningham, for one thing, and if Walter and I had put ourselves in her shoes, we'd have seen it was an honest mistake on her part. We could not expect her to learn all of Maycomb's ways in one day. We could not hold her responsible when she knew no better. I'll be dogged if I didn't know no better than not to read to her, and she held me responsible. Listen, Atticus, I don't have to go to school." I was bursting with a sudden thought. "Burst, you'll remember he just goes to the first day of school." So Scout's trying to get out of school. Then Atticus says, "Look, listen up. This is the point. Atticus said the Ewells had been the disgrace of Maycomb for 3 generations. None of them had done an honest day's work in his recollection. He said that some Christmas when he was getting rid of the tree, he would take me with him and show me where and how they lived. So they're really bad. You can't force them to go to school. They're really, really poor." Okay? But he says about it being against the law. And finally, he says to make a compromise, she can learn how to read at home and go to school. But the whole point is that he's saying understand things from Miss Caroline's point of view, right? She couldn't understand Maycomb's ways. So this is Atticus's moral principle of empathy. All right.